All right, we're going to align the circulation and balance it in the front of the body. So I'm going to demonstrate a horizontal chest opener to start. And if you decide this cross band in the back is not something you want to work with, you could also have your bolster lengthwise. However, you wouldn't want this many blankets behind you. We don't want to be pushing our chin down. So some of us might actually go without 2 blankets, but let's find out. So this is what I'll demo first. You got a wall space today, and you have blocks, sandbag, perhaps a ball. And important today is a belt that's unbuckled. So your belt should be kind of a free belt to the side. Okay, so sit on the block in the front. You can always go without the block after you lie back and decide. What might be a deciding factor when you recline is the supportive balance, because it's interesting how the abdominal area, it partially stretches downwards, but more of it's going this way towards the chest, right? Whichever pose you're doing with a bolster, probably. This is the direction. It's kind of interesting. Because now when my legs stretch down, whether I have the block or not, I will feel a little persuasion down through the frontal hip spaces. Let's call it subway spaces. So set the feet out apart. If you're on the bolster lengthwise, you can still do that as well. But let's add some sand regardless. So we'll have sand on the upper leg parts, and I want you to get a feel where the sand supports you. The ribs have an invitation to start to expand. So with the sand on the front of the thighs and the feet, just let them relax. If you are worried they keep turning out too much, just step them farther apart. And kind of, if you get close to the wall, it's really good because it will kind of help them stay a little bit more up versus turning out. And then stretch the arms with the consideration of this blanket situation. Are you going to keep it stacked up? Are you going to entertain the idea of a little bit less with the chin lifting versus pushing down, which would be ideal? But if you don't like that lower blanket height, use it. Use it if you don't feel enough support. Okay, stretch the arms open. And if the shoulders center back in like a heap, notice how nice that feels for the heart when the shoulders have gravity to move them back. Not an often experience during the day, huh, for our shoulders. Just let gravity have you. And then center the emphasis with the vision inside. And take some care to simply visualize the possibility of creating a little more space in the front of the body, that pure movement of the ribs via breath. And feeling if the bolster below you has pressure into the back. Instead of not liking that, you want to kind of find a way to let that encourage the front spaces to continue to soften. Relaxing the hands, gently breathe. Now, if the sandbag ever feels like it's introducing too much of that pressure downwards, you can always slide it off. You could also bend the knees and place the feet to their standing position that they know. And you can have the knees release towards each other and turn the feet in. That might be a nice release. Part of this, though, is stretching the front of the hips and the flexors, right, the quad. So the legs reaching down is part of that. So let's take a few more slow breaths and just ground ourselves into our practice. Okay, now, if you have the bolster lengthwise, that doesn't mean this one, horizontal. What you'll need to do is bend through the legs and then we'll all, actually, let's all go this direction, bend through the legs, and we'll take cobbler's pose. If you have sand at the very top of the thighs, it might actually be interesting for this circulation through the upper kind of weave of the hip into the adductor. But for some people, it kind of slides off. It doesn't stay, or it feels like it's too much indent. So it's up to you. I find it interesting, but not all the time. So if it doesn't feel like it's causing discomfort, it's probably a good option for weight, pressure, weight bearing. And that's the idea with that as well, weight into the pelvis, into the hip zone. But just notice where the touching of the feet and how that layer of just touch of feet together kind of brings the circulation kind of boon into the legs, inner leg, right? Maybe we don't really access the inner leg as much as other parts when we walk around. So, you can let your feet kind of push around a little bit, even though the feet are together. You can kind of let them swim back and forth. I find that to be fun to do for my ankles. So I mean, the feet are together and they're, think of this as fishing, I guess, but I'm not sure what the description could be. But as the feet come back to a stillness, we're going to bring the support of the legs to each other. So slide the sand away, bring the knees to point up, and okay, let's lift up the hips. So bring the feet to press down. Either way, you've got the bolster, lengthwise, horizontal, you'll need to do the same kind of action. So when you lift the hips up, if your bolster is lengthwise, I suppose you really do have to turn it to horizontal. If you've got a block below you, I want you to slide that out so it's not below the bolster. Then slide the bolster down under the back of the pelvis. And we're going to get a ball, or if you don't have a ball, a block will work okay. Have your blanket so it's flat. You only have one blanket under your head. No longer are there any options for two. And I know you're like, do I toss the ball? Do I toss it at the wall? No. Bring the knees up just for a moment and then reach the ball between the knees and lower the feet down. Now, if the ball doesn't feel like you have an adequate kind of pressure into it, you can't really push it, then I want you to make sure that it is selected between so that you can squeeze into the ball. Sometimes pointed away works better for me, like where I can feel the knee bones, right? Not so much the squishy thigh. So I want you to feel where the breath kind of emits. Inhale, the belly zone has a little lift. And then on the exhale, you're going to be visualizing you move your knees to your chest. We'll get there. But inhale, lifting up through the core. Okay, your bolster's under the pelvis. Exhale, visualizing the knees towards the chest. Now, arms are going to release down so they're in more of a goalpost position. If you need your arms to help you out coming up, just get them. Right, they're there. They're already attached. They're already ready to go. Okay, so on the inhale, belly moves up. Exhale, squeeze so the belly presses down and you bring your knees in. This will progress. Okay, so if you didn't get the knees very far in, let it be. And then bring the feet back down. And that's a retention breath right there. So it's not, exhale, exhale, it's just retention, hold. So inhaling, belly moves up. And you got to pace yourself. Exhale, knees moving in. So my hip crease is not that much, not all the way. And then bring the feet back down. Inhale, belly lifts. All these rib muscles we worked on so far, kind of activating them. And then you don't have to squeeze into the ball, but you might find it an interesting focus, either direction. So take the last couple ones here where you're just really curious, especially if these hip flexors got all of a sudden at the last one gripped up. Inhaling, imagine that the inhale actually gets that low, and then exhale. Okay, now once the knees draw in and up, the feet are off the floor, I want you to push in, squeeze the ball, or if it's a block, and try to manage that squeezing. Push, 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 so that you visualize the lower back kind of spreading out when the knees go in. In fact, let's just take the ball out and keep a hold of it. Bring your thighs in towards each other. Do what works for you to kind of release the back. Maybe it's you bring it a little closer to the chest. Maybe you need to move your bolster farther down or farther up. It usually seems to be bolster farther up that makes the back find ease. Okay, so now place the ball between and see if you can kind of replicate that scenario that you're pushing in, the knees are squeezing, also towards the chest, and then you're going to decide the actual angle. So stretch the arms back open and let the knees go side to side. This is all preparatory for something yogic. Okay, so feel if you kind of smush around a little bit in the back zone, feel when the knees move. There's kind of a trickle effect in the back. There's a little stretch there. So feel how the arm position is supportive. It may not be goalpost for you. It might be they kind of slide out. Mine just started doing that randomly. So it must be a good idea. Okay. So trust your body's wisdom here if it needs to take a moment of rest, or if you want to make the pace a little faster, because the motion can feel good and warming up the back. Now, when the knees go side to side, no real stop in the middle yet. We're just going back and forth, kind of windshield wipering. You know, when you feel that the weight is, it doesn't stop in the middle, right? You want to really go to the weight is felt when you lean to one side. Okay, now come back into the center and make a more circular pattern. So it's not a big circle. It's kind of a sacrum pressure here. Circulate, massaging around the outer edge of the sacrum, the kidney area. And that's kind of a little bit higher up, right, than maybe the bolster exactly, but that gives some circulation there. And then when you stop into the center, okay, feel how the waist is just moving with the breath. Let that occur comfortably. And then as you lower down your feet, breathe in, belly lifts. Exhale towards the spine, bring the knees back up. Maybe you don't lift all the way in towards the chest. I find this one interesting. Let's do just a couple of these. So you lower down the feet, inhale, and then exhale. Lift the feet maybe just a little bit. See where it pulls. You might feel it pulling on the whole front line of the body. Last time. Okay, now this time I want you just to settle your feet on the ground. You might still have the ball there. And then take a belt. Let's get some extra help here. Okay, belt help. Okay, so let the belt just lie on your torso. Well, you might think it's kind of a little bit higher, like rib line. And when you push the feet down, you want to press down as much as they can right now. I want you to lift up into what you think of as kind of a bridge pose with this little faint support under you. This probably is supportive, the bolster. But just get a little lift of the hips where mine are still all touching the bolster. I have a feeling that my glutes, my buttocks have a little tone, and all around the buttocks, I feel some grip. But when I lift up the hips, I'm not going to focus on squeezing the ball right now. Just create that dynamic kind of strength into your hips, hip strength. Okay, now visualize the knees are going downwards towards the feet, okay, towards the wall maybe. Really visualize that motion of the thigh lids going that direction. Okay, now when you lower back all the way, pressing into the bolster, you're going to carefully craft the hip sinking, and lift up the feet and take the ball out off to the side yard. And then we'll take the belt under the right foot. And I want you to let the left leg lower down and then hold the belt together with the left hand and cross the right leg over to the left. Okay, so guide the circulation of what's already had some impact is your hips. And then you get to decide how far you go over. Maybe less is better right now. Just kind of feel how the foot flexes, the dynamic across the outer ledge of the leg. I feel both inner and outer on my right leg. And then when you cross over, you might let your right arm open. It could be casual, doesn't have to be as extreme as possible, but just let it go and then let your head roll to the right. Now feel if you give your leg a little slack, kind of slack the belt so the foot pushes a little bit downwards, and a kitty corner. Your leg might be a little jolted if you pull on the belt routinely. So feel, meaning that you kind of pulse the belt. So if you hold on and you just feel that reach of the leg, this is a really individualized one. Some of us, the leg will enjoy crossing it far, but I invite you to do less as far as what it looks like, and do more with kind of taking inventory on the circulation through the upper leg, into the hip. You can bend the right knee anytime. You might enjoy a little bend. Okay, and let's kind of take a few moments to just let that right leg kind of heal and repair from this one. So what we'll do is we'll slide the left foot in, bring the right ankle to that left knee, and you could keep a hold onto the foot. I kind of don't mind that, it's there and makes me feel like I'm kind of holding it accountable. But you can also just kind of give yourself, let go of the belt, just leave it wherever it ends up. And you're in like reclining figure 4, right? So my left foot is stable, pressing down. My right knee reacts to open. You still want to keep opening up the chest, right? You haven't left that out. You can't really resist that because of the bolster pushing you up. But kind of notice if you're getting tippy with the hip, right? The right hip is kind of starting to sink. You might scoot your left foot a little bit more in the center. So it's an interesting kind of base support. Okay, and then let's switch a root here. So first thing, let's maybe let that right thigh, just feel that you push the right heel down and forward, away from your hip. Okay, then let the foot relax. Now the left knee is already kind of ready to go. So you're gonna lift up and both legs kind of slide a little bit on this when you are using a belt under the foot. So left foot goes up into the belt, or the belt goes up into the foot. I don't know which is first. And you might like doing a little hamstring kind of cycle here. Just feel the hamstring upside down. It's an inverted hamstring. All right, as far as your brain thinks. Now, when you're pulling, feel how the foot responds to that sensation. Right? Notice where you hook the belt on the foot. Is it the upper part of the bottom towards the ball? Is it right in the center? Some days that feels really secure. Okay, close off the belt so the right hand reaches up for it. And then you'll start to cross it to the right. The left leg goes right. And you might be really guarded, like using both hands. You might be comfortable opening the left arm out. But when you cross over, feel with the leg, let the leg do what the leg wants to do. Maybe it's going to kind of get a little passive and drop because it is a leg weight. It's got a little weight to it, doesn't it? Long bones, right? Top of the leg. And then all the curious lateral sensations, right, through the IT band. So you might be familiar with the sensations on the side of the leg. So feel maybe the leg straight is good, maybe a little bending. Now perhaps a micro bend is supportive around the knee. So just kind of feel for the circulation. And then feel for yourself right in the waist area, stretch through the torso. Breathe. Solid breath. In the torso, feel the movement of the belly. Again, if you're feeling like it's just too much in your back, even if that gets involved, you might need to use the right foot, kind of scoot yourself a little bit back on the bolster. That feels better for me, just making those little adjustments. And you might even decide not to use the belt for a few moments. You might give yourself a lot of slack, bend the knee, maybe hold on to the side of the bent left knee. Just kind of feel what that does. I know, you've been in the body for a while, but it's just feeling these kind of creative circulation, options for these tighter areas. Okay, now if your head is center, keep it there. If your head was turned to the left, start to move it back into the center. Okay, now I'm just going to take I'm going to just keep my belt. So I'll bring the right foot in, slide the foot in so the left ankle touches that right knee, maybe just above the knee to the thigh. And kind of get a feel of how the inner leg, this whole connection or all this integration with all the body, but feeling what is touching down, even if it's the pelvis. I know the foot's obvious, the right foot, but the pelvis tilts into the left leg, right? Because that's the kind of focus here, the left hip. So one side might feel just different, not quite the same stability. So you might scoot your right foot into the center a little bit more. Okay, now hopefully your inner thigh has some circulation right now, some little bit of a peak sensation. It might be high up in the inner leg. But when we bring the right foot up off the ground, take a hold of the belt, and you're going to bring both feet up into the belt and push them out. And just noticing like you're trying to let the feet go away from your upper body, like they tilt forward. So it's not how far the feet go outwards. It's more of that inverted circulation, right? Back towards the heart. And this one, I feel like it's kind of a belly full pose, kind of fun and feeling. You might notice, this hasn't felt that way before because the feet are not pushing all the way outwards. It's going to move the abdominals differently, right? If you push forward. You've probably done core exercises when your feet are straight up and then you let them go down and back up, and that can feel somewhat like this, huh? Forget the name of those, but anyhow. So feel when the knees are in this kind of plain position. The knees don't have any issues right now, likely, unless you have a little bit of fluid kind of retention around the knees or build up in the legs. You might feel around the knees on something like this. Gives you some information. So pull firm, slide the feet, and then feel when they're straight up. Well, this is a good one. So I'm going to hold on to the belt, and I want you to let the feet push a little forward. So this is what I meant by that core work. Okay. Usually without the bolster if this is done. So we'll only be here for a moment. But I want you to feel when the feet try to flex, so the back of the legs have a little sharper reach. Scoot the belt closer to the upper bottom of the foot towards the ball of the feet. Both feet have the belt right now. And really pull firm. Of course, you can move the legs to vertical anytime. Okay, now when you let the legs go straight up to vertical, pull firmly on the bottoms of the feet. Okay. Now, noticing what's between the knee and the ankle is, shin kind of area. So that's going to be where our belt goes next. So just to know that, okay? So how we're going to get it there is going to be interesting. So what you'll do is you'll bend through the knees, and first thing, the belt can't just stick there unless you have a bunch of tape with you. Okay, I didn't bring tape to class. Bring the belt to the ribs, push the bolster forward. Still have your head on a blanket, so definitely scoot the bolster forward. Then place your feet on the bolster. Now, I moved my bolster too far down. Okay, so I want you to have your feet on the bolster, and then bring the belt. You can just kind of toss it over the knees. It's kind of a fun activity. And then there you got your belt. It's on the shins. Okay, kind of decide, should I have the blanket? Should I not? Nod your head a little bit back and forth, and then decide, do you want your blanket to be there? I think I'm going to go for and opt for a little lower height under my head. Okay, so not so much bulk under my neck. This way I have less of that roundness in my cervical spine. It's still a little cushion. Okay, so grasp onto the belt and then lift up your hips into bridge pose. Now make sure that the belt feels like it's helpful. So if I have my belt too low for me, like if I slide it down to my ankles, I can see something that someone might like that. But for me, I like my belt a little bit higher, okay? And my feet might turn out, right? So I've got to kind of have a little discipline where I feel the heels press. And then when I pull, I'm using my upper back. So it creates a little more of a shoulder stand, okay? All right. Now let the spine just go down with gravity's flow. Try to go really slow through the spine. Elongate. And feel all the way down through that base, especially behind the heart, and then lower, that it touches down. Okay, take a moment here where the belt is higher up at the shin area, so it feels like it's kind of getting to the knees. And let the elbows center. They're around a belt buckle, maybe not so good. All right, so you want to feel that the legs are, before you lift your hips, almost try to move your knees towards the base of your mat. Just do a little knee press, like it's going towards the wall. If there's a wall there, or it's going away from you, right? You're going away towards the base of the mat. Just little itty bitty push, and let the lower abdominal muscles wake up. If you're really confused about that, certainly the idea of a pelvic tilt, scooping the tail, but I want you to work a little bit more on the elbows touching down. If they need to broaden out to the side, that's okay. So as you lift up the hips, you're going to give yourself more slack on the belt, certainly. You don't have to tighten the hold. but give yourself slack. Slowly, slowly, the hips lift. The hips get stronger by this movement. And then we kind of stay in that position in bridge pose for a moment. And just notice the circulation in the upper leg, closing around the buttock, and then it kind of threads in towards the hips. Okay, this to me feels like a pretty, I guess you could say, intense. It's pretty dense sensation, intense. We'll make it up, intense. All right, now keep the hips lifting, please, and let go of the belt. Oh, no help. And get a block and place it under the pelvis, about the tailbone area. It could be the lowest or the second height. If you're not so sure about that second height, go with the low height. It's okay. It might be very helpful to find what is supportive for you. Now lower down so you're on the block, and you don't have to grip your buttocks to hold yourself up in the upside down position. And just feel how there's a hip crease. Feel how the waist actually kind of feels like this is the description oftentimes is like a lagoon, but I'm not so sure. I feel like my waist is my belly's like a lagoon, but maybe it's lagoony. Okay. And then I want you to bring the legs to do either of two options. You can straighten them down on the bolster, step out of your belt, like so, or you can bring them straight up to the ceiling. It's up to you. It's up to your back. And this might feel like I want to do this because I know this is a good place to get myself some release, psoas, stretching. This is honestly good for that. But some of us might only do one leg at a time for this. Maybe one knee bends and the foot touches and that leg can really release into that side of the psoas. So I appreciate when I'm taught this one at a time sometimes. So try that maybe. And then there's some of you that want to get your legs up. You've just been waiting. So here you go. You want to get your legs up. We'll do that at the end anyhow. So you decide. But if I get my legs to go up and I kind of go back and forth, then I kind of hinge at the hip. So I'm losing some of this, right? This length. Okay, so if you're doing legs up, I want you to at least try a few moments of this, even if it's one leg at a time. And if you haven't tried one leg at a time, I encourage you to try it so that you can feel one side and letting the weight really lean down into the block. I know the blocks are generally, well, actually, there's a lot of different sizes of blocks, but we can't inflate them. Yoga props are still the same. Okay, now do you have one side of the hip flexor area that feels more stretched? And just, maybe that's happening. You're like, oh, wow, I thought it was this side, but now it's this side. That feels like it's a little grippier. You just try that. And then when you can bring the feet both back to the bolster, let the weight trickle back to your shoulders. So you're almost pushing your feet just a little itty bit more into the bolster. Okay, arms are down by the sides like they reach, hands towards the base of your mat. Try to turn the arm bones so the inside of the elbow is open, the palms are open, but let them relax a bit so the fingers don't have to stay like in this presentable force, right? They can scoop a little bit, they can curl. And then as you push down to the feet, right, you want to find just that small beginning of lifting the hips. To me, it goes from passive to like 70%. I'm not that efficient at going really slow, but feel when you lift and then slide the block out and get your ball and massage around the glute. So it's going to be underneath you. It's going to be on one buttock underneath at the center upper part of the buttock, back, of course. And then you're gonna lean your weight into the ball, like all of your weight is on the ball, and then you go back and forth to massage, because that's what that is, right? It's pressure and movement equals massage. Okay, so get a feeling of moving back and forth, circulation. Might feel really good. And one side is good, but two sides to work with it is better. So try to get to the second side. And if you want to let the knees kind of lean over to one side and tilt, just be sure the chest can still stay open, right? So I'm not like rolling my shoulders both to one side. Try to keep, anytime you can do this, work with opening the chest. It's kind of our little bit of our focus in restorative is continuing to work with refreshing that circulation. Okay, so get a feel when the back muscles have a little bit of lift and the pelvis has the movement. And now we'll let that pelvic floor area kind of absorb all this work we've done, which has been quite a bit, right? In this whole pelvic area, rib area. So we're going to get to side stretches here. So I want you to let the weight shift back and center. If you kind of like a little bit of lower chamber strength, you might put the ball right around the sacrum, but let your body weight really sink into it first. And then bring one leg straight up at a time. So just a few moments of that lower abdominal circulation, right? You can feel just that balance. If you're really, wiggly on it, just let your elbows press. It's only temporary. If it's too much on your back, or if there's any feeling of discomfort, pain kind of getting larger, then honor yourself, get out of the position. It's always okay. Okay, now feel when the legs bend. They're always a little bendy on this one, a little bit of crease. And then when the feet kind of lower down, nice work. Whew. You're going to lift up the hips, move the ball over to one side, lower the spine, and then let's roll to a side, any side, and we'll come up. Okay. All right, there's a wall kind of off to where your feet were, I hope. There's a wall space. So you want to get near wall space here, not right at it though. Okay, so we're going to do side stage with the wall today. You might use the wall, you might not, but we've never done it with the wall. So might as well do that. So we're going to take a bolster that's still next to your hip, and we'll just add our blankets close to the wall. So we'll stack up two, and they're probably a good idea to have them in a quarter fold. I suppose some people might kind of roll them, make them into a wad. I mean, it's likely going to be whatever works for your neck. Okay, so we'll have to fuss around when we get on it. Now, if you've got some sand, you're going to need that. You don't need the blocks on this version because you have a wall. So the blocks are not useful. The ball might be. So I'm going to move my sand right next to where I think my arm would reach. Make it easier on your shoulders. Don't force your arm to kind of drag the sand too much. And then you're going to use the bolster so it's across. And as you lean into it, you don't want to get too close to the wall, but if you're taller, we got to be farther away. If you're short like me, I guess I'm closer. So here's kind of the gist of your sense. You might lean into your elbow and kind of feel if you can touch the wall. And that's probably a good distance. So some of you might be farther away, okay? You don't want to be too close because you don't want to punch your wall. Okay, so take a ball on the inside of the left leg and giving the sand, slide it. Maybe if you use sand, you can always use your foot that's close to the ball, the other foot that doesn't have the ball under that leg to push it around. And when you add your sand on the side, I want you to get a feel of how the support of the blanket works for you first, the sand and blanket. So I want to find the sand where it kind of gives a little bit of pull It feels like it stretches the waist when you get it there, and then when you start to lean into the ground, that goes away, and then it'll come back. So the blanket's under your head. You decide how high you want to go. This one would probably be a different discussion versus the chin rounding forward as much. You want to find that you have support. So I don't want you to go too far down if you don't use many blankets. And then maybe you reach your hand to the wall. You don't have to. If it feels too alarming in your shoulder joint and you feel discomfort, then you don't. You can have your arm down, you can have it on the side. But when you feel that reach with that left limb, both left sides, right, you can feel both the upper and lower have some difference in their energies and some similarities. Yeah, I find my arm reaching in the beginning. I have to find where at the wall it feels supportive, and then how my neck leans. So we all know about like neck tilting stretches, like when we move our ear to our shoulder. This one's pretty close to that. It's not that far, even though it doesn't make a lot of sense to put your ear to your shoulder, but it's closer than if you're sitting upright. Okay. Now, if you decide to move your arm down for a few moments, that's great. Might be a little more calming. And then truly tune into the cycle of breath. If you're focusing so much on getting the shape better, like improving it, making it more intense, maybe a good option is to let the arm relax and breathe. But just getting the breath rhythm and the weight of the head relaxing down. Okay, and then when you want to move the arm back, if you have it on your side, you might try it once your weight of your head is leaning and resting. So you can also bring your fingers to the left side of the neck and just do a little bit of tissue circulation, kind of notice if it's tightening. We try to get that to release. Sometimes a little touch and nudging can be nice. Sometimes it doesn't feel good. So you got to try something. And then maybe that arm is not quite touching the wall. Maybe it's lowering down towards your blanket. There's all kinds of features here. This feels really good on my tricep stretching when I bend my elbow deeply. But just make sure that nothing's kind of sharp, right, as far as sensation. It might feel a little raw, a little bit overall susceptible to the stretch, like you can feel the circulation kind of seeping into the side. But at the final few moments, do let it focus on the side, not the arm only. This can be probably overtakes, right? The sensation jumps ahead of the ribs after you stay with the arm over. So that can take a rest. Take a few slow breaths. Just lying on our side. Side liers. Okay, now let's move the sand or let it just fall away. Okay, now you decide on this next one whether you're going to do the transition is going to be either windshield wiper, or you could do a boat pose if you're feeling boat deficient. I haven't done it for a while. So windshield wiper is fairly obvious, right? It would be elbows down on the bolster, knees sway side to side. Okay, if you're going for boat pose, you can do this one for a while to massage the glutes. If you're going to do boat pose, use the belt and reach it either under the feet and let the legs stretch up, or You could go with a supported version, which might be kind of nice to do today. Been a while since we did the supported version. Make a loop around your back, overhead around the back, and then make sure it's, oh, that's a little too tiny, isn't it? It's a big enough loop for my cat to do boat pose, but not me. Okay, and then the legs extend forward, and then you are very supported. And it might feel as if the leaning back, you can put your elbows to touch towards the bolster. The bolster might be in the way for some of us. If you're taller, right? It just depends. So lengthen and feel how the ribs center and lift. Yeah, this doesn't need to hurt at this pose. So part of it is using your props. The place I don't particularly like it is my feet. Feels a little bit pressure in the bones of the feet. But I can make do and feel my head lean back. Those of us that are windshield wiper are waiting. Okay, now bend through the legs if you're in boat pose with the belt. Belted boat. Okay, now lower the feet. Okay, it gets a little bit of circulation to the breathing muscles to regulate that one. And then we all end up with our elbows back and knees go side to side. Okay, so feel where the hips are working together on this one. This is a pretty nice hip unity position. It's not really one to the other as much as they're both are balancing. Okay, now when you lean to the left, we'll take side sage on the left hip down, right side is extending. So you could use the sand, right? That's important. Be careful of the knee pressure. So maybe a ball on the inside of the right knee or right thigh. Everyone's is different with this one. I've never seen someone use the ball exactly the same. So some people have it a little higher, some a little lower, some even to the inside of the lower leg bones. But when you lean down, feel how the weight centers down. Side. And reach. Oh, I'm so close to the wall on this side. Okay, I should shift that around. Okay. All right, the last pose, you may have pushed your bolster back. So when you are reaching, again, you could have the hand higher, you could have it bending through the arm pieces, right? So you get a feel of circulation in the tricep. You might kind of turn your head down to the left. You know, the arm has all kinds of ranges on this one. And what's kind of fun is that I suppose it's not just the arm that's making that happen, it's your ribs. Right, so feel how the left leg bends firm towards the bolster, right? Your weight is on many spots, right? It's not just the bolster, but you do need to use that quite a bit for the pose. So leaning into it, just let your body release to that bolster. Okay, if your arm starts to get a little bit tingly, it's a good idea to get out. You don't want your arm to fall asleep. It's not the goal for that one. And make sure your head is relaxed, your neck centering, tipping your left ear down. So you're not trying to hold your neck up. Let your head go. Take a few more breaths. Even if I have my arm down and I feel my right shoulder, feeling the bones there shift a little bit back, I find that to be quite a bit of progress for the circulation kind of perspective in that joint. So even if my arm is, if it stays down, I still feel like this is good work versus this looking like it's more, it feels like I can kind of roll it back. And then feel my breath when my shoulder is back, right? We may be more tolerant when our shoulders roll forward in our breath. We're used to that quite a bit more, huh? So when the shoulder is back, feel the difference in how many of the ribs get involved. Probably a few different sensations in the breathing muscles. Okay, now if your hip is kind of tightening up to do the shoulder back, notice. Try to let things soften a bit. You're only human. Maybe you're more than that. Okay, now after all that mumbling here, we're going to let the sand slide away. And let's see, we had right side had some, it was at least exposed, whether you had sand on it or not, you had this is a top awareness. So when you roll to the left, we're going to use the wall for our twist. So take some care to bring the knees towards left first so the back can soften. Like you're kind of in a little bit of a huddled position over on the left for a moment. Push the bolster closer to the wall. And you're going to sit on it and do a little shoulder rolling. And we've got the right side that we just emphasized. So I do think we're going to let that side go up. So what we'll do is we'll take the left leg to bending underneath the right leg. Okay, so I'm a little close to the wall. What I want you to be able to do is reach back to the wall. So you don't want to be too close, because it's a great help for twists. Okay, so slide the sandbag onto the left side that's bending. You can see this leg, my left leg is bending out to left side. Okay, the right leg is going to either be on, the foot is going to be on a block with the knee turned out like so, or you're going to use your left hand to support crossing that right leg over to the side. It's actually more for the top bone of my left leg. It's the knee and then just right above, right? So you don't need to pull your foot as high as possible. That doesn't seem to be like the best thing, right? For you don't have to tighten it up and keep, pressing into a tighter twist, but make sure that your right foot does touch down. If you have a second sandbag, you can put on top of the foot. That can be nice too. Now, when you turn to the right, you're going to reach the left elbow to that right leg, or you're going to hold the leg. Okay, the elbow will give you more twist, that's for certain, because you'll feel like you can get farther back. So you're going to reach to the wall and try to take that rotation. So if you feel like, oh, it's too much, you can go farther away from the wall. You don't have to be this close. Sometimes being close enough is a little more secure to the touch, because you can feel not such a drain on the shoulder, but more work in this area it can work out without like a joint complex with an issue, right? Even the hip is farther down than the rib. So you're really not going to disturb that space joyfully, right? You can work with the circulation in the ribs. Okay, feel how that left arm connects to the right leg, whether it's holding it. Yeah, this can be really intense for the shoulder, huh? So the hand, generally we're taught to turn the fingers to the right, so the thumb is higher up, but I find just anything is okay, right? Sometimes that's too much for the shoulder and even parts of our chest. It's going to start threading into the pec here. Well, that's kind of nice. Kind of nice to get there. Pecking. All right. So feel how your head is shifting. Maybe you're going to nod your head a little side to side. Practice your nose. Practice your maybes. Okay. And then feeling when the arm lowers down on the blanket, You might go, oh, that's a lot of circulation in the shoulder. Okay, now the shoulder's probably not gonna, or the parts of the arm aren't gonna swell up, but it feels pretty warm. So when you come back forward, you're gonna take the right foot. Now, if it's already on a block like this, you do it this way, you're already there. But when you take the right foot forward, I want you to kind of loosen up the thread of the legs. You can have the foot on a block, or you can have the foot on the ground. Now that seems good to me, foot down on the ground. So either one. So sand on the right thigh, and then hands reaching back to the blanket or maybe the bolster, you decide. And see if you can lift up the heart with the chest upright position. Not up tight, but upright. Or maybe it's up left. Or uplift. I think that's what it is, uplift. And then lean forward to the range that's good for you. So for me, I get a little more out of just this plain seated uplift. This is, I can tell this is good for my spine. I'm going to stay with this one. Yes, I could go forward. I could maybe touch my hands on the floor. Feels like there's more to it, but I'm still, know that the best thing I can do is to work on this strength and stability in the spine, because it's not a lot of time. I get to practice this experience right to the back. All right, so you decide forward or centering uplift. Breathe, maybe close your eyes. Okay, now when you do bring the hands away from behind you, if you already have them in front, you're ahead of us all here. Then bring your hands to the thighs and then get a feeling of the ribs centered. Ribs move out, ribs center in. And then change the crossing. So maybe your left knee, the back of the knee needs to get a little bit of stretch. So you might just reach your hands under that back of the knee, kind of massage that area, get a little bit of blood flow. So we don't have to creak into it so quickly. And then sometimes holding just above the back of the knee and those threads, and then pulling to bring the knee back to bend. And then slide that right knee so it lowers down. If this hurts, then you can always let the right leg be straight. But putting a ball under it won't work for this version unless you have the block in front of you. So you're either going to have your leg crossed over to the side of the right leg to create the twist, or you'll have your foot on the block and maybe a ball under the knee. That would work. So you could do that version too. But the right hand to the left leg or elbow, right? I like to give options here. Left hand back at the wall, and feel when you are turning that the lowest part of the ribs, the floating ribs, that area that's connected to the spine is really quite mobile for the twist. I mean, you're going to be able to use all the thoracics in your turn, but you might notice, oh, those are the most mobile. And the kind of unfortunate factor with that is that then we can start to connect to our lumbars. So we want to be careful. Sitting on the bolster will help us keep that centered and stable, the lumbars, but you still don't want to tug and torque and push and get too pushy with your elbow. So feel the right amount of touch with the right elbow to left leg or hand to leg. That might feel best, less forceful. Left hand back at the wall. You decide it probably ought to be, straight back from the heart zone. But when the fingers spread out, right, feel that connection. Breathing. Now, if your back is feeling like this is a pretty strong rotation, and it's not quite feeling ready for that, you might lift up the heart a bit, spread the breath through the ribs, upper chest for a moment, breathing through the nose though. Really get the breath to stretch throughout. Yeah, of course, honor any sensation that doesn't feel like you want to stay with it. Maybe you need to get out. Okay, now as you release the left hand down, if it's not already off the wall, it's to the blanket. Feel where there's that turn. Okay, and then we'll slide the left foot forward, maybe on the block, maybe on the floor, then put the sand over on the left side, and then situate yourself. So yeah, this one, I kind of like the ball under my knee on the left side. Maybe need a block under one leg and a ball under the other. You might need two props under the knees or none. So if I don't use the prop and then my knee is kind of dropping down, it's getting a little vulnerable that way for me. Doesn't feel like the best option to have it drag in space, right? So when I lift up the chest, I can be here, I can bring my hands back, right? You can lean. And that might feel like, oh, I want to stretch my hip even more, but we are going to do a kind of hip finale. So don't feel like this is your last hip hurrah. Okay, now feel hip hooray. I think that's what it is. So when you lean forward, if you're choosing this version, notice if your breath is kind of not very expansive. Sometimes tilting, I feel a little bit less expansive when I'm sitting up, opening my chest. Yeah, so do it for the spine. Do this for the spinal column. Yeah, connect to the sensation of that essential part of you that keeps you intact. And if you're leaning forward in the final few moments, or that just feels kind of nourishing for the hip, still keep the chest open, the spine extended. So the option would be extension. And some of you, you realize it would be flexion, which is not our aim here. This is not the aim. So try to keep that field of respect here for the floating ribs, lower rib space, kidney space. Okay, now come back on up and let's get prone. So I want you to take let's see how we're going to get here. We're going to take the right leg. I want you to move your blanket though. So let's get those off to the side. Oh boy, they might get in the way here. So take the blankets away and you'll take the right leg back. You're kind of close to the wall, so be careful because if your foot's too close, then you can be unhappy. So scoot back or maybe get off of the bolster your own way. And then come straight down for a little bit of abdominal compression. So I have my feet touching the wall. And I want to find that when I lean down, this whole center part of my body has the bolster under it. So when you do stretch down, it doesn't feel like a big stretch, does it? But it is an interesting circulation for the organs. So bring the knees apart and you kind of get cozy like you're going to take a little nap here. And bring your forehead onto the blanket. Roll it up as much as you need. Don't even worry about how it looks or if it's perfect, but forehead, like right at the hairline, has a little bit of pressure into the blanket. Make a dent in your blanket here. Let your elbows open out so the hands are closer in than the elbows. And then feel the belly move into the bolster with the breath. So really massage the organs here. Yeah, don't worry about putting sand on your back. Just let your body kind of heal and receive that circulation into the front, to the organs. Interestingly, it can also feel like it lightly stretches the chest if your bolster is high enough. Okay, now slide the elbows back so that they're about just under the shoulders. Sphinx pose. So you're preparing here for the elbows pressing, the forearms pressing, and the hands, they're kind of relaxed. So if squeezing the bolster for you works better, you can try that option. That does it. I can form moving my elbows closer in, but then they kind of slide out on them. But they don't feel, they're a little jiggly, right? The elbows, they don't quite stay pressed into their slot. So when you press down, let the legs be passive and see if you can move your chest a little forward. Breathe. Belly moves down into the bolster. That's probably the difference on this one than up dog. Okay, now with that abdominal area having some ritual of movement, you're going to slide the hands back so the palms press. Now, if this is too much in the shoulder, you'll slide your hands forward a little bit after you try to get to lift your chest. Then lift, lift, lift. Take about 4 counts to get that full lift up. And let the knees be heavy, so you don't have to force. If you don't like your knees touching the ground, you can push your feet into the wall. This can feel really good too with the bolster. So push your feet into the wall, elongate the front of the body. Okay. Now the neck can feel really supported in this one. It can either feel really great or not so good. So use the total arm strength here to keep the spine toned. And then let the knees relax. And then slide the hips back to table, round the back into cat. Inhale through the arch. Exhale. And inhale. Okay, now if your props are the way mine are, this is where we'll go. We're going to take our sandbag, slide it onto the mat, and then push the bolster over to the left side of the mat. And then we're going to roll onto our back and lower down and place your blanket under your head. Now, this is not a good blanket height for me. So I'm going to take a 1/4 full blanket, cross the left leg over to the bolster with the sandbag on the outer left thigh. Okay. And you're wondering, where else do I need a ball usually on this one? But some of us might be okay with the emphasis on the sand closer to the knee. Some of us want the sand closer to the hip. And then use that support to spread the left arm open. This might take you a few more moments to get into it, to finagle around. But when you have that bolster under the leg, you can always move it a little bit, little tiny movements till it feels like the bones of the leg that are touching the bolster and kind of center. Now, glutes have to relax on this. They're stretching, especially the left one, but you need to have the glute area kind of find an ability to release and to let the back heal. The back repairing and working from all we've done today, which has been quite a kind of eventful sequence as far as the different variations we played with. So let your head center or turn to the left, all up to you. Now, if the sand isn't quite where you feel like it's fully helping your side of your leg stretching, you can always inch it down or just really encourage that simple weight that it is to continue to stretch from the back into the hip joint. Now, feeling the benefit of opening the chest. Bring your head back in center and move the ball and switch sides. And kind of feel if the sand to your torso is useful, maybe to the floor is better for you. And you do want to kind of feel where that weight is. And when the sand is supporting that torso movement, when you move the bolster to the side now, it might feel by now a little bit interesting with the breath. Maybe not so much. You're used to it by now as well. It could be either way. But sand to the side of the right thigh or closer to the hip, up to you. And then add the ball. If you have that, if you don't like using the ball, then don't. But the arm can span open, and it's probably only going to find a couple different options that are useful. Doesn't mean that if the arm is low, it's not as helpful. You might feel that just the exact amount of comforting circulation in the chest. Now, how much bandwidth do you have with your upper chest? Most important part is to let go, right? To let the body weight that's, obviously all of you connecting is the body weight to the ground, feeling that essential service to circulation in yourself. So part of it's just letting go and letting the circulation happen from the direction of the body angles. The things we do to improve our circulation. Twisting around, using props to lift up the breathing and to hold the leg. It's kind of nice. Yeah, I think a little blanket is good on this one for my neck and the upper respiratory tree. And knowing there's always more to stretch out, right? So this would be a good time before we get to our final inversion to just kind of feeling where the fine tuning of this final feeling of stretch, that it's just the right amount. It's plenty. Doesn't have to be further. You've done all you need to do. And then when you slide the ball, let it roll out, as well as the sand, pushing the sand towards the wall. Now, if you don't do legs up with a wall, you could put your legs up on a chair, a stool, a couch, right? You can do that too. So when you roll on up or sit up, actually, you'll bring your bolster right next to the wall and blanket. If you have an eye pillow, grab that. That's nice to have. If you like your second blanket on your torso, I would use that. But you're going to sit your way into the wall as close as you can go. I played with this the other day with a block next to the wall, my bolster next to the block. So I had my hips kind of down on the block. And I still kind of like this version. But if you're feeling like it just doesn't work well for you, you can always have the bolster a little farther away from the wall, just a little bit. That might actually give you that verticality support. So if you've always had the bolster shoved against the wall, you might try pulling a little bit away. Well, that's working nice for me right now. So sand on the torso, bend the knees, place it on the feet. You might have to nudge the sand a little bit with each foot before it feels like it's exactly balanced. And then once the legs have done that pressure, you're going to feel a little bit more of the turning in of the feet than you are turning out. So that internal. Now the legs, you can even touch onto them and kind of feel that energetic pull down through the legs. You want everything to go back towards the heart. So that the arms lower below the level of the heart, since the heart rate is slowing down for this pose, and the blood pressure as well, lowering. So just feel the element of movement in torso, the circulation, and the fluidity in the belly. If you can let that have a little rise and fall, returning the body to a state of balance with this quiet attention to yourself. Now, reversing that flow back into the pelvis as well. You might feel where the hip center lengthen back through the spine to the brain. And really feel the heels touch the wall if possible. Little bend of the knees and shift of the feet from the wall. Have that nice lower abdominal tone. And then bending through your legs. And feel when it's just the beginning of the bend and the hips basically feel like they stretch a little bit when the knees draw towards the chest. It's an interesting pull in the hip, in the back of the hip. And then reach up, or you can toss the sand behind you and roll back and forth. I know some of you might roll right up and be seated, but you might do a little kind of tenderizing motion for the back of the pelvis. When else is it going to get that? So when you roll to the side, use your hands, push, and then when you come around, take a moment of upright spine and feeling where the hips center and the hands reach together. Feel the hands touching, so there's a little friction, rubbing the hands together. Feel that pressure through the palms. And then once there's a little bit of buoyancy in the hands, this is kind of a buoyant awareness in the body. Sliding the hands together, interlace, and then feel just a mild touch of the hands pushing, interlacing, and rounding. Feel where the back pushes into the wall. And then feel when the hands go into that pressing position, lifting up towards the ceiling, head centers back towards the wall, and then hands measure motion towards the heart. Inhaling together, breathing in this attention inwards, and exhale, bowing into the space behind your heart. In gratitude, thank you all